It's a sunny Tuesday morning, and I'm driving down the familiar stretch of Elm Street towards one of the quaint parts of town. I'm Claire, by the way, an interior designer. I've been doing this for over a decade now. My job? To turn houses into homes, making every corner cozy and every space inviting. I work for a small company that's doing surprisingly well, considering the big names we're up against. Today, I've got an appointment with Mrs. Evelyn, an elderly lady who's been wanting to revamp her living room. She sounded sweet on the phone, but you never know with clients until you meet them. Pulling up to a charming, slightly worn-down bungalow, I grab my sketch pad, tape measure, and color swatches from the passenger seat and make my way to the front door. I ring the bell, adjusting my blouse absent-mindedly. It's been a hectic morning, skipping breakfast and all, and now my stomach's complaining. The door swings open, and there stands Mrs. Evelyn, a small woman with a shock of white hair and a warm smile that crinkles the corners of her eyes. "Oh, my dear. Come in, she beckons with a frail hand. Her living room is a throwback to the 70s, with floral wallpaper and heavy, dark furniture. It's like stepping into a time capsule. "So, what can we do to brighten up this lovely space?" I ask, ready with my pencil and pad. Mrs. Evelyn leads me to a sofa, her steps slow but sure. "I want something modern yet comfy. Not too stiff, you know? This room has seen many Christmases and many lazy Sundays. It should feel like that." We chat about colors and textures, and I show her some swatches. As we're deep in discussion, my stomach decides to perform a solo. Loudly. I'm mortified. Mrs. Evelyn chuckles, not missing a beat. "Sounds like someone's hungry. Let's have some lunch, shall we?" Before I can protest, she's off to the kitchen. I follow, still a bit embarrassed, but grateful. As she tosses a salad, she starts asking personal questions. "So, dear, are you married? How's the job treating you?" I laugh, trying to keep it light. "Oh, just married to my job right now. It eats up most of my time." She gives me a mysterious smile and nods, like she knows a secret I don't. Lunch is simple but delicious, and just as we're wrapping up, the doorbell rings. "That'll be my son, Mark. He's just about your age," she says with a wink. I feel a setup coming on. Mark turns out to be quite the charmer, tall and more handsome than I expected. Mrs. Evelyn quickly excuses herself, leaving us to talk about, supposedly, the living room. "So, you're the mastermind behind my mom's new retreat?" Mark begins, flashing a grin. Guilty as charged. "Your mom has great taste, though. We're going for cozy modern." We dive into a lively discussion about design trends, and I find myself genuinely enjoying his company. By the time Mrs. Evelyn returns, Mark and I have exchanged numbers to discuss further ideas, or so we tell her. So there I was, a few months down the line, smack dab in the middle of planning a life with Mark. He'd popped the question on a chilly evening by the lake, simple and straightforward, just like him. "Claire, wanna make this a forever thing?" he'd asked, holding out a ring, no pomp or show. I'd laughed, the cold-making puffs of air visible, and said, "Yeah, let's do it." And that was that. The next weeks were a whirlwind of wedding planning. Who knew pulling together a simple wedding could be such a hassle? Mark and I wanted it low-key, but Linda, his mom, had other ideas. Linda was waving a bridal magazine in the air, pointing at a picture of a lavish setup. "Look at this, Claire. Wouldn't it be wonderful? A wedding like this talks, you know." I tried to steer the conversation back to reasonable waters. "Linda, we appreciate that, but we really want a wedding that feels like us. Not too big, just family and close friends." Linda narrowed her eyes a bit, sizing me up. "And who's footing the bill for this modest shindig?" "You make good money, Claire. Surely, you can afford a little splurge?" Mark's cheeks went red. We hadn't really nailed down the gritty details of finances yet. I sighed. "We're splitting it. That's only fair, right?" "Fair, yes, but sometimes you lean in a bit where it counts, right?" Linda pressed, not one to back down. The conversation ended with coffee and stale cake, but it set the tone for the next few weeks. The wedding turned out beautiful, without the excessive flair Linda wanted. It was perfect for us, intimate and genuine. After the wedding, life began to settle. Or so I thought. We decided to move out of my cramped apartment into something bigger. Mark found a place that was a bit of a stretch financially, but he was so excited about it. It's perfect, Claire. You'll have space for your office, and I can finally start my home brewery thing. The apartment was indeed something, $3,000 a month kind of something. We toured the empty space, its vastness echoing our footsteps. It's great, but the rent, Mark. I trailed off, already doing the math in my head. We'll make it work. I've got some savings, and hey, maybe I'll get that promotion soon, Mark replied, the eternal optimist. I agreed, reluctantly. Okay, but let's be smart about furnishing. I can handle that part, get us some deals. I took charge of turning the apartment into our home, pouring my savings into furniture that made sense and a few splurges, because sometimes, you need that ridiculously comfy armchair that swallows you whole. Mark and I had just gotten settled when his mom decided to drop by for her first official visit since we moved. The moment Linda walked in, her eyes widened, taking in the new setup. Oh, Claire, this place, it's just exquisite. I want the same for my house, you know, the same couch, these lamps, everything. I just smiled, not wanting to dive into that conversation. Glad you like it, Linda. As Linda rambled on about furniture, I excused myself to check on dinner, leaving them to chat about home aesthetics. Around the same time, work had thrown me a curveball. Anna, the director's daughter, joined our design team. Initially, I braced myself for a storm of entitlement, but she was nothing like I expected. We clicked almost instantly, much to my surprise. One evening, after a long brainstorming session at work, I mentioned to Mark how talented Anna was and how she was lined up to take over from her dad someday. Mark seemed unusually interested. We should have her over for dinner. It'd be good for you, networking and all that, he suggested one night as we were cleaning up the kitchen. A week later, Anna stood in our living room, her eyes sparkling with genuine admiration. Claire, this is beyond beautiful. Seriously, this might be the best design project I've ever seen. As the evening progressed, Mark outdid himself in the kitchen, dishing out his best recipes. He was all charm and jokes, keeping Anna laughing and engaged. It was unlike him to take such a lead during our gatherings, and it set off a faint alarm in my mind. Why are you laying it on so thick? I whispered to him in the kitchen while we were serving dessert. Mark kept his voice low, a cautious glance towards the dining room where Anna was seated. Babe, I'm just trying to help. If she likes us, likes you, it could mean big things for your career. You know, she could speed things up at work. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter and too many glasses of wine. Anna seemed oblivious to the undercurrents, thoroughly enjoying herself. As she left, she hugged me tightly. Thank you for tonight, Claire. I haven't had this much fun in ages. I closed the door behind her, leaning against it, the weight of the evening settling on my shoulders. Mark joined me, wrapping his arms around my waist. See? I told you it'd go great. I nodded, not entirely convinced. Yeah, great, I echoed, but my mind was already turning, questions and doubts lining up like unwelcome guests. Mark had always been a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy, easygoing with a casual charm that had first drawn me in. So, when he started swapping his usual attire for sharp suits and freshly styled hair, it was hard not to notice. What's with the new look? I asked one morning as he adjusted his tie in the mirror, looking more like a catalog model than the man I married. He flashed a grin, meeting my eyes through the reflection. Just trying to keep up with my gorgeous wife, you know? And, well, looking sharp might help me move up at work. I raised an eyebrow, but let it slide. As long as you don't start ironing your socks, we're good, I joked, though a part of me wondered if there was more to his makeover. The new wardrobe became the least of my worries when Mark suggested another dinner out, this time inviting Anna. "It'll be fun," he insisted. "She loved the last dinner at our place. Why not hit the town?" I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something felt off. Still, I agreed, and the evening was set. We chose a fancy Italian place downtown, the kind where you felt compelled to dress up a bit. Mark was all smiles, pulling out chairs and playing the perfect host. As we settled into our seats, the conversation flowed easily, mostly thanks to Anna's lively stories about her recent travels. When the bill came, Mark reached for it with a flourish. "Allow me, a treat for such a wonderful evening," he declared, then leaned in close to me. "Babe, I forgot my card at home. Can you cover this?" I nodded, keeping my smile plastered on as I handed my card to the waiter. Anna, oblivious to the exchange, thanked Mark. "You're quite the gentleman tonight," she said, her smile warm. Driving home, the evening replayed in my mind. "Mark, why the sudden show of generosity every time Anna's around? You forgetting your card is getting old." He kept his eyes on the road. "Just trying to make a good impression, Claire. It's all part of the game, you know?" But it wasn't a game to me. It was our life, and these stunts were racking up not just charges, but doubts. Over the next few weeks, it became a pattern. Dinners, outings, even a weekend getaway, all on my dime under the guise of Mark's forgetfulness. Anna seemed to enjoy our company, always gracious, always cheerful, which only made it harder for me to voice my growing frustrations. Then, one afternoon at work, Anna pulled me aside. "Claire, I really appreciate the time with you and Mark. It's been a blast, honestly." Her sincerity was evident, but it only twisted the knife of guilt deeper. That same day, I was summoned to the director's office. Mr. Thompson, Anna's father, was a stern but fair man who had always treated me with respect. "Claire," he began, his voice softening, "I wanted to personally thank you. Anna's been through a lot lately, and your friendship has brought her back to life. It means more than you know." I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "I'm glad I could be there for her, sir." Walking back to my desk, the weight of the situation settled in. This wasn't just about keeping up appearances or climbing the corporate ladder. Real emotions were involved, real lives. And here I was, stuck in the middle of a game I didn't sign up to play. It was just another Wednesday when Mark came home earlier than usual, a serious look plastered across his face that didn't bode well. I was still shuffling through some fabric samples for a client when he dropped the bombshell. "I quit my job today," he announced as if he were talking about the weather, not our financial lifeline. I stared at him, my hands frozen on a swatch of navy blue velvet. "You what? Mark, how are we supposed to manage? You know the rent here isn't exactly pocket change." He shrugged, a casual dismissal of my rising panic. "You're doing well, babe. We'll float on your income for a while. I need something better, something that fits my skills." I swallowed the knot in my throat, trying to process his nonchalance. "Okay, but what's the plan until you find this dream job? We've got bills piling up, and not just small ones." Mark was already heading to the fridge, apparently more concerned with what was for dinner than our financial health. "I'll start looking tomorrow. Don't worry, I've got this." But he didn't have this. Days turned into weeks, and weeks bled into months, with Mark leaving every morning under the guise of job interviews. Meanwhile, the reality of covering $3,000 a month in rent plus all our bills was beginning to take its toll on my savings and my stress levels. During this time, my friendship with Anna had continued to strengthen, a silver lining in the midst of my marital chaos. So, when she texted asking to meet for coffee, I welcomed the distraction. We sat in a cozy corner of Café Verona, a place that had become our go-to for unwinding. But today, Anna seemed off, her usual vibrancy dimmed by hesitation. "Claire, I need to talk to you about something serious," Anna started, her fingers nervously twirling her coffee spoon. "It's about Mark." My heart sank. This wasn't going to be good. He's been sending me messages, Anna continued, her voice a whisper. Romantic ones. And flowers, Claire. He sent flowers to my office. I felt a cold wave wash over me. What? Anna, that can't be right. Mark wouldn't. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking as she showed me the screen. The messages were there in black and white, undeniable. Compliments, flirty emojis, and worse, declarations that he was ready to leave me for her. I don't want this, Claire. I value our friendship too much to let his infatuation ruin it. Anna's voice cracked with emotion. I've told him to stop, but he hasn't. I'm so sorry. The cafe around me blurred into insignificance as I tried to breathe through the betrayal. I can't believe this. Thank you for telling me, Anna. I need some time to think about what to do next. As I left the cafe, the crisp autumn air felt harsh against my skin. I walked aimlessly, lost in a storm of hurt and anger. How many mornings had he left with a kiss, claiming he was off to find a job when he was chasing a fantasy? How could he unravel our lives with such reckless disregard? As I walked back into our apartment, the air felt heavy, like it was saturated with all the lies and betrayal. Mark was sitting on the couch, the one I had meticulously chosen for our living room. He didn't even look up as I entered. What's going on, Mark? I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. He finally glanced up, his expression cold and distant. You need to leave, he said bluntly, his words slicing through the tense air. I froze, confusion and anger swirling together. What are you talking about? Look, Claire, I've thought about this, he began, his tone harsh. My mom is moving in here tomorrow. You're just in the way now. I stared at him, speechless. This was not the man I married. He stood up, walking over to the desk and retrieving a stack of papers. I've signed these, he said, thrusting divorce papers at me. You should do the same. It's for the best. My hands trembled as I took the papers, the reality of his words slowly sinking in. Your mom? Why does she need to move in here? Mark scoffed. Because I'm going to be living with Anna soon. She's fallen for me, Claire. She's sending me messages, she loves me. And let's be real, she's a much better match for me financially than you ever were. I felt a hollow laugh rise in my throat, but I suppressed it. The irony was too bitter. Just an hour ago, Anna had confirmed it was all one-sided. But now wasn't the time to correct his delusions. Okay, Mark, I said calmly, masking the storm inside me. If that's what you want. I left him standing there, baffled by his audacity, and went to the spare room. That night, sleep was a stranger. I lay awake, planning my next steps, my mind racing faster than my heartbeat. At the crack of dawn, I was online, searching for a new apartment. By breakfast, I had signed a lease for a new place, a fresh start, a clean slate. I called the movers, scheduled for late morning. When the movers arrived, I directed them to the furniture, all of which I had paid for. Mark, hearing the commotion, came out of the bedroom, his face a mask of confusion. Why are you taking the furniture? He asked, his voice a mix of anger and disbelief. I pulled out a folder from my bag and flashed the receipts at him. Because I bought it, Mark. You wanted me out, so I'm leaving. And I'm taking what's mine. The movers began to lift and move the furniture, filling the apartment with the sounds of motion and change. Mark stood there, silent now, watching as his plans unraveled piece by piece. Just as the last pieces were being loaded into the truck, Linda, my soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law, burst through the door with a suitcase in tow, her face flushed with expectation and confusion. What the hell is going on here? Linda barked, her eyes darting frantically from the nearly empty living room to the movers handling the furniture. I stood firm, clipboard in hand. We're moving out the furniture. I'm leaving, Linda. She stomped her foot, a childish gesture that would have been comical if not for the situation. Stop them. That's my son's furniture. You can't just take it. The movers paused, looking my way for instruction. I simply nodded, and they resumed their work, carrying a dining chair past her as she sputtered in disbelief. "How am I supposed to live here without any furniture?" Linda wailed, turning her wrath on Mark, who had just emerged from the bedroom, looking as if he'd been caught in a storm. "It's also good that you found yourself a richer girlfriend who will satisfy all our desires." I couldn't help but let out a laugh, though there was no humor in it. "Oh, Linda, you should know by now. Anna isn't interested in Mark. In fact, she's made it very clear she wants nothing to do with him." Mark's jaw dropped, a look of utter betrayal crossing his features. "Claire, I cut him off, stepping closer so only he could hear. "She told me everything, Mark. How you've been harassing her. She's even threatened to involve the police if you don't stop." Linda, overhearing part of the conversation, turned on her son with a fury I hadn't seen before. "You idiot. You could have kept Claire. At least she has a job, a career, something. She was our ticket." The irony of her words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Mark looked from his mother to me, desperation seeping into his expression. "Claire, please, can't we just talk about this? Maybe we can." "Talk?" I interrupted, my voice sharp. "After you handed me divorce papers? There's nothing left to discuss." Linda rounded on him again, her words a shrill, piercing through the now almost empty apartment. "You fool. She was the best thing you had." I turned away, the last few items being loaded behind me. With a deep, steadying breath, I addressed them both, my voice calm but resolute. "I've signed the papers, Linda. And I'll be filing them tomorrow. There's nothing here for me, not anymore." Settling into my new apartment was like taking a deep breath after being underwater for too long. The freedom to design my space without any compromises was exhilarating. I poured myself into every detail, choosing colors and textures that reflected my newfound independence and strength. The result was stunning, every inch of the place was a testament to my ability to rebuild and renew. As I was hanging the last piece of art, a vibrant abstract piece that seemed to pulse with energy, the phone rang. I glanced at the screen, it was Linda. "Claire, you need to come back." Linda's voice was desperate, tinged with something I guessed was regret. "We can't manage without you. The rent here, it's impossible, and Mark." I cut her off, my patience wearing thin. "Linda, I'm not part of your family anymore. You and Mark made that very clear. You'll have to figure it out just like I did." I ended the call and blocked her number without a second thought. The next day at work brought unexpected news. I was at my desk, reviewing fabric samples for a new project, when my phone buzzed. It was Mr. Thompson, the director. "Claire, could you come to my office? I have something important to discuss." Curiosity piqued, I made my way to his office, knocking lightly on the open door. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Mr. Thompson looked up, his face breaking into a broad smile. "Claire, please, come in. Have a seat." As I sat, he leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "I heard about your recent win in the design competition." "First place, Claire. That's fantastic." I couldn't help but smile, pride swelling in my chest. "Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful surprise." He nodded, then his expression turned more serious. "That's not the only reason I called you here. I've been watching your progress, your resilience and creativity, and I'd like you to head up our new branch. It's close to your new apartment, and honestly, I can't think of anyone better to lead it." The news took a moment to sink in. A promotion. A recognition of my hard work, completely on my merits, without any backroom deals or manipulations. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I'd be honored." Walking back to my desk, I felt lighter than I had in months. This was more than just a job promotion, it was a vindication of my choices and my integrity. Anna called that evening, her voice bubbling with excitement as she congratulated me on my promotion. "You totally deserve this, Claire. I knew you'd make it big." "Thanks, Anna. It means a lot, especially coming from you," I replied, grateful for her friendship and support. As we chatted about future plans and projects, I realized that despite everything, I had emerged not just intact but stronger, more confident in my abilities and my value. The past was just that, past. The future was bright, filled with possibilities and the promise of new beginnings, and I was ready to meet it head-on, with open arms and an open heart.